We begin with a victory Monday for opponents of the New York City Police Department's Stop and Frisk program. Federal Judge Seema Iyer ruled the city's highest officials turned a blind eye to evidence that officers are conducting stops in a racially discriminatory manner. The judge did not order an end to the program, but appointed a federal monitor to make sure that the program no longer creates fear of being stopped when going about the daily activities of life. Arise News legal correspondent Seema Iyer is with us to explain more. Seema, it's always good to see you. Happy Monday to you.
Happy Monday.
This is a big victory for those who have been big opponents to stop and frisk. Is it a surprise at all, this ruling?
It was a hope, but it was not a surprise because of what has been going on within the community, as well as just the political ramifications. There's been so many proponents of ending stop and frisk. So we're not surprised, but it's a happy day for not just residents of New York City, but for attorneys, criminal defense attorneys, constitutional right lawyers. This changes everything, Debbie.
It really does. And the numbers, really seem to be startling in terms of the number of stops that resulted in actually finding anything, let alone a conviction.
Basically, the easiest statistic is this: 90% of the time, the NYPD was wrong when doing the stop and frisk. Another interesting point that people don't realize is what is stop and frisk and why do we do this, or what's the threshold? It's called reasonable suspicion. No one understands this. I still don't understand this, and I've been doing this for 20 years. So how are we supposed to expect our police officers to? It's not just that they have to have facts. An example, what did they observe this person doing? But they have to point to something directly that put them in fear of danger. See how hard this is, and see why every case is different.
And that was part of the argument that was made by those who opposed this. Now, Judge Seema Iyer really made a damning statement. I want to read it just a little bit. It said, the city's highest officials have turned a blind eye to the evidence that officers are conducting stops in a racially discriminatory manner. That really is a clear slap in the face to Mayor Bloomberg, who has vigorously defended this, as well as Police Commissioner Ray Kelly. How do you think the police, as well as the administration here at New York City, will respond to this ruling?
Well, I think the federal monitor is really what's going to change everything. So what that means is there will be an agency or a few people who will actually regulate the practices on a day-by-day basis. Another interesting point about stop and frisk, Debbie, is that our city's crime rate was on the decline before stop and frisk. So now we have stop and frisk, and Bloomberg and Ray Kelly, they all want to take credit for the declining crime rate when crime was already down anyway.
Well, it's so interesting because I'm sure many of them are going to predict now that we're going to see a spike in violent gun-related crimes, which is what the stop and frisk policy is targeted toward.
However, it was targeted towards gun because, again, going back to my element of danger, but a lot of times what was recovered were drugs. So see how disingenuous police officers sometimes can be when saying, oh, I'm going to, Debbie's making some kind of movements and we think that she's dangerous, but actually we know that this person's selling drugs and we recover drugs and then we get an arrest and no one challenges the basis of the arrest.
You referenced that the judge is instituting a federal monitor. How's that going to work and how sweeping will these reforms be?
Well, I think that the federal monitor will be, I don't see it as a huge agency. I see at this point, from the conversations that are going on, it'll be a small agency. And I think that it's going to be hard to regulate what happens on the street. Again, a federal agency, you're sitting in your ivory tower and you're looking at statistics and graphs, but you're not in the high crime areas. You're not watching the police officers. So at that point, there has to be liaisons between the federal agency and the NYPD, and having sergeants or deputies on the streets looking at police officers and then saying, well, why did you stop that person? Explain it to me, case by case.
Might make them think twice. Is this a victory on both sides? Because after all, the judge did not strike it down, did not declare it illegal, but of course wants to impose these reforms.
Well, the judge didn't strike it down. However, the judge not only is opening this federal monitor issue, but more importantly, it's opening a venue for lawsuits. So I am predicting now there will be many lawsuits claiming I was stopped and frisked on the basis of racial discrimination.
Why am I not surprised to hear you say that? Legal correspondent Seema Iyer, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you again soon, actually later on in the show, so stand by.